Few stories manage to be simultaneously touching and heartfelt, deeply horrifyingly upsetting, and lead you to desire to start a super secret storytelling club and an enchanted manor where magical books and hidden rooms exist while social constructs like class, wealth, and status do not. But the breathing method somehow manages to do all of that and more. Hi there, I'm your host, Mr. Doyle, and this is a great undertaking. Today I am continuing my quest of covering everything Stephen King ever published in chronological order, as well as all of the countless adaptations and iterations of King's work that his publications have informed and inspired. This is the 7th, and for the time being, the final video in the Different Seasons series. So far in this series, I've covered the novellas Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil, and The Body, as well as the film adaptations for which they were the source material. In this video, I will be discussing the 4th novella from the Different Seasons collection entitled The Breathing Method. The Breathing Method, a brief synopsis. A man receives an unexpected invitation to an exclusive club from his wealthy, powerful boss, a person who, prior to his invitation, he had never had more than a nodding acquaintance with. Though he is apprehensive at first, he eventually convinces himself to attend the club, which turns out to be more than just the stuffy men's club that he suspected it may be. The club hosts a sort of ritual story hour in which the various unofficial members share stories with their fellow participants, but there is one particular story that the characters within the breathing method and readers of the breathing method are subjected to that leaves a lasting impression. History and inspiration. Well, I couldn't find a single article, King interview, or even a Reddit thread discussing the origins or inspiration for the breathing method. Nothing. There were one or two fan theories, but nothing from King himself, so the story was originally published in the Different Seasons collection in 1982, and that's the end of that segment. The ritual of storytelling. The breathing method tells two stories. There is the frame story or frame narrative, which is the introductory and main narrative that essentially leads us to the story within the story, also known as the embedded narrative. The frame narrative features our protagonist, David Adley, and his invitation to and experiences at the seemingly enchanted men's club. The embedded narrative, however, is delivered by another member of the club by the name of Emlyn McCarran. And while the frame story of Adley and the men's club is intriguing and unusual, it is McCarran's tale that steals the show and leaves the reader, as well as the characters within the frame story, aghast, dismayed, and ultimately shocked. And both the custom of oral storytelling that is an integral part of the club in the frame story and the embedded narrative technique that King employs have histories that are steeped in ritual and tradition. Oral storytelling. Oral storytelling is the oldest form of storytelling there is. Well, aside from cave drawings, hieroglyphics, and petroglyphs perhaps, but oral storytelling brought life and longevity to the history and folklore of virtually all civilizations and cultures, from the ancient stories of Aboriginal Australians whose stories date back thousands of years to the epic tales of Greek mythology, the traditional storytelling rituals of Native American tribes, and the Passover celebration of the exodus of the Jews from slavery in Egypt, which is shared by Jewish families. Oral storytelling can be found in virtually every culture. Oral storytelling was a means of passing on life lessons, parables, and to preserve important cultural milestones. It served to inform and educate, as well as to entertain and captivate, to impart morals and memorialize historical events. And while the delivery and presentation of the tradition has changed and adapted, oral storytelling still exists in many forms. People have been sharing stories via word of mouth for literal millennia, and that practice has only grown and been reinvented and sustained in recent years. Prior to the advent of technologies like the radio in the late 1800s, these stories were told to audiences or passed on to friends and family in person through performative readings or theatrical presentations. But once radio became commercially available and accessible, the tradition of oral storytelling and the stories that came with it spread further and faster than ever before. And while it never went away entirely, oral storytelling has seen a massive resurgence during the era of the internet. Audiobooks and podcasts are hugely popular mediums which have continued the tradition of storytelling, and while they may not necessarily share the same significance of the aforementioned cultural traditions and rituals of sharing folk tales, the art and impact of oral storytelling has maintained a strong foothold throughout the world in the modern day. Story within a story. As I previously mentioned, King employs the story within a story approach in the breathing method. He utilizes the frame narrative or main story to establish the premise, setting, and characters. And within the frame narrative, the characters are subjected to the harrowing tale of the embedded narrative, the story within the story, which is told by the elderly McCarran. The story McCarran tells is equal parts captivating, moving, and devastating, both to the audience within the story at the men's club, as well as to the reader, or in my case, the listener. This is one instance in which I strongly recommend the audiobook experience over reading the story. You get the full experience of the oral storytelling tradition, and Frank Muller, who narrates all 4 of the different seasons' novellas, is a masterful storyteller. Anyway, the embedded narrative literary device, or story within a story, much like oral storytelling, has a long and, forgive the pun, storied history. The earliest recorded examples come from ancient Roman, Egyptian, and Indian literature. One particular example from the year 1650 BC that caught my attention is entitled The Golden Ass. And I am 100% mentioning this specific story because the title and premise are hilarious to me because I am a child. Anyway, the story is about a dude named Lucius, and while trying to perform a spell to transform into a bird, he is accidentally transformed into an ass. There are, of course, embedded narratives and stories within the story, The Golden Ass, which I just wanted to say a few times out loud. But I digress. Other classic examples of authors and literature that utilize the story within a story method are Shakespeare's Hamlet, Homer's Odyssey, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This method of storytelling is not exclusive to literature, however, and can also be found in movies like The Princess Bride or Stand By Me, and even in music. 2 examples include Alice by the gravelly-voiced storyteller Tom Waits, and even Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. Final thoughts. The breathing method was, like all of the novellas in different seasons, a departure for King. Different seasons saw King trying new things, expanding his horizons, and proving once and for all that he is more than just a schlocky horror author. The breathing method in particular used literary devices and ideas that King had never experimented with before, at least not in his published works or to the extent he did with this novella. And while the breathing method wouldn't be the last time King would employ the story within a story, it is for me the most memorable of those particular King tales. Alright, so next week I will be discussing one of my favorite King books, which seems to be a more divisive one among constant readers, and that book is Christine. New videos drop every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so slap that subscriber bell like you badmouthed your mama to get notifications. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty pleased with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.